going to talk a little bit here about why DNA and strategies for SNP testing. What follows on, I think, fairly well from Ali's talk, where he was comparing use of STRs and SNPs. And it's just to emphasise the importance of the SNPs and to look in a bit more depth, fairly briefly, about what can be done with SNPs and how to date SNPs and so on. Right. So what we're looking at here, as Ali made clear, is the SNPs are particularly important for assisting with research into branching of families. They determine, one or more SNPs can determine different branches of families, major branches and minor branches as well.
Excuse me.
So, yes.
Excuse me, I'm a complete novice here and I've no idea what a SNP is.
That might take me another 15 minutes. It's a very small mutation. It's quite a stable mutation, unlike STRs, which is a different type of mutation which can back mutate. But a SNP is a change in a single nucleotide base, and as I say, it's very stable. So that if that SNP's occurred and you carry that, then you know you're descended from that particular branch.
Okay.
So it's sort of very briefly. Right, so somebody may have done a test, they've discovered they have a particular SNP, and that SNP's been identified as from a major branch, maybe dating back hundreds of years, 800-900 years perhaps. For example, a MacDonald may have the SNP YP326. I may know as a result of that he's descended from Somerled, the 12th century warlord. But the clan Donald's a very large clan, many branches, so the next thing your test taker's probably going to want to know is which particular branch of the clan Donald does he descend from, and ideally which individual, which historical individual did he descend from. Can that be discovered? Now, as mentioned on the slide here, obviously this is going to be dependent on age estimates. So he's tested for a particular SNP. What date did that SNP occur? Who was alive at that time that he may have been descended from? Age estimates have been done. Ian MacDonald, who's going to be speaking to later on, has been doing quite a lot of work with age estimates of SNPs. YFull is a website that also does estimates of SNPs, but they are to some extent, they're based on mutation rates and so on, to some extent they can be a bit unreliable, and it's really important they should be linked up with genealogically targeted testing if possible. And again, bringing in, as Ali emphasised, the use of long documented male line descents. Ideally, we would like to get to the point where we can link specific SNPs to specific individuals, historical individuals, which we're now calling SNP progenitors. And probably the first and most famous example of a SNP progenitor is Sir John Stuart of Bonkle, who died in 1298 at the Battle of Falkirk. And he carries SNP S781, which was discovered in 2014. In fact, if any of you have been watching Ant and Dec's DNA journey, you will have seen Jim Wilson there, and Jim Wilson was the person who identified S781. Okay, so let me just try and explain a bit about how SNP progenitors can be identified. It's something that can be done, has been done with Sir John Stuart Bonkle, has been done in a few other cases, probably not widely done yet, because there are quite a lot of criteria that need to be fulfilled, and it's not all that easy to do that. Now, if you look at this diagram here, on the right hand side you can see E and F there, right? So they test, this is a hypothetical example, so E and F both test, or descendants of E and F both test basically, and they carry a SNP that I'm calling here FMG1. They test positive for that SNP. So we know it's been inherited from their father. Okay? because more than one has the SNP. So we know that B carried FMG1. Then we look to see what's happened with his brother, B's brother A, and his descendants have tested as FMG1 negative. Okay? So we know that FMG1 cannot have been passed down from the father of A and B, because one doesn't have it and one does. So in other words, it must have occurred in B. Therefore, B is the SNP progenitor. And that's the methodology that was used to identify Sir John Stuart of Bunkle. Similarly, if you look at the left-hand side here, we have G and H, whose descendants tested positive for FMG2. So it must have come from their father, C, but his brother, D, his descendants tested negative. So therefore, C is the SNP progenitor of FMG2. Okay? Now, just see what the next slide is. Yes. So as I mentioned, what we want to aim for is targeted testing, if possible. And here's a fairly recent example, a real-life example here, which was carried out by Donald Stewart down here, who was been involved in some of the research that we've done. Now he tested, I think it was maybe late last year, for a new SNP called BY101802, and of course he wanted to follow this up with more testing. There was another individual from North America, test taker 7, who's on his own over here, who also tested for the same SNP, positive for the same SNP. So Donald wanted to try and find out exactly where this SNP occurred. Now he was very fortunate because he had a lot of documented 4th, 5th, I think even 6th cousins possibly, who had done testing or sort of basic testing. And so he decided to go to contact one of them and see if he would do a bit further advanced testing. Actually, I think test taker 1 had also already done some advanced testing, and he did not carry the new SNP. So Donald then contacted test taker 3 here, and he actually took what you can do, which is a single SNP test, and he tested positive. So we know that the SNP BY101802 must have been passed down to both these sons, and therefore from Andrew Stewart 1715 to 1790, but not from John Stewart up at the top, because the younger brother, well, I don't know if he's younger or older, there, the ancestor of test taker 1 did not carry it. Therefore, the conclusion is that the SNP progenitor in this case is Andrew Stewart 1715 to 1790. Now, the test taker 7, who's sitting on his own over there, his next stage is going to be to try and identify who his immigrant ancestor was, basically. And it's going to be either, going by the dates, it's going to be either a brother of these two or a nephew of these two. And hopefully with further documentary research and possibly more tests being taken, you'll be able to identify that. Now, this is just a wee sample from, some of you might be familiar with a website called The Big Tree. And this is an example that includes BY101802, which is what we call downstream from ZZ52. And all these other folk are ZZ52, but only these two also carry the newly identified BY101802. Of course, there's more now because the person, the relative that Donald contacted, has also tested positive for that. So, what I've been working on recently with some input from some of my other colleagues is a SNP progenitors list, and this is a sort of draft format of that. So here we have Sir John Stuart Bonkall there, we've got Andrew Stewart there, we've got their dates, we've got the SNP guide, the position of the SNP. The mutation was from G to A there, and also on that one. And the evidence for identifying this person as the SNP progenitor. So it gives the two sons that tested positive, and then from the brother's line tested negative. So we're hoping that that can be developed further and start to be populated if we can find other examples of SNP progenitors. As you can see, the criteria are quite difficult to meet. A sort of halfway house is what I'm calling multi-generational SNP dating. And here's an example from the Stuarts, and you can see Sir John Stuart Bonkall at the top right there. And this is in relation to the SNP Z38845, which we know is carried by descendants of King Robert II. Okay. Now it's not carried by descendants of Sir John Stuart Bonkall. These two other generations, there are no surviving male lines from any siblings, any male siblings of Walter Stuart or of King Robert II. So in other words, we can't pin down, there's not going to be the lines possible to do the specific testing required to identify a specific SNP progenitor, but we can refine it down to the fact that Z38845 must have occurred in one of those three individuals there. And so this is a similar chart to the SNP progenitor list, looking at multi-generational SNP dating. So it could have occurred in any of these three here. There's another SNP, this is the ZZ52 one that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, which is carried by descendants of Robert III. It might have occurred in Robert III himself, or it might be in one of his descendants. We don't know at what point it occurred. Right. And I'm just going to finish up, changing tack slightly, just to give you a very quick update. Some of you may know that we're in the process of running now at university here the Declaration of Our Growth Family History Project. It's got a documentary strand and a genetic genealogy strand. Documentary is largely based on student work, and there's set an assignment to research some of the individuals associated with the Declaration of Our Growth. And we've got to create brief biographies, 4-generation genealogies, and coats of arms, images and descriptions of coats of arms where possible. But obviously what we're interested in tonight is more the genetic genealogy strand. Now, we're now entering the second phase of that. We have quite a number of test takers who've come on, joined our project. We've not done much new, we've not been able to do much new testing because difficulty of finding male lines that are still surviving and so on, but we have quite a number of folk who've already tested from documented male lines who've joined our project, and we've now got, I think, I say around 23, I think that's now updated to about 25 relevant test results that we can look at and analyse. Look at matching and branching and that type of thing. The major focus is expected to be the families I've listed there. So those 5. There are 1 or 2 others that there are some interesting possibilities if they can be researched a bit further and followed up. We may be able to bring in another couple of families. That's roughly where we're at the moment with that. So the most interesting part is still to come over the next few months. And finally, just a little bit about the outputs expected from this project. So there's an article in the current issue of History Scotland, which is very much just an introductory article explaining what the project's all about. Yeah, Ali and I are going to be doing presentations. Medieval Bruce Heritage Trust are holding a one-day symposium in March of next year at Dumfries. There's also what's billed as an international academic conference at New Bathlandy College in April, and we're probably doing a pre-exhibition presentation at Dumfries Museum in September. The culmination really of the project is the project exhibition, which will be taking place in Arbroath Abbey from July to August, and it will be running again in Dumfries Museum September to October. Now, there are a number of other articles planned that will probably be appearing over the next year, and there might possibly be, if we can attract a little additional funding, there might be subsequent runs of the exhibition or cut-down versions of the exhibition happening maybe very end of next year or running into beginning of 2021. Okay, that's it. Any quick questions?